O divine presence, sacred spirit, O holy, holy one, how great thou art, everywhere, always. Whether it is the dawning of the day or the stars in the night sky, this is the Creator. It is in this very room as the air pressing up against our skin. Every step and every breath of every creature is the activity of this divine one, this sacred spirit. It is here now. I am standing on holy ground. Each one of us is in the presence of this sacred spirit. It surrounds, it caresses, it envelops. It is the wisdom and the power informing everything around. And as I inhabit this body temple, this that I am is born out of this sacred activity, the source. It is breathing me in and breathing me out, as it is for every person here. All that is functioning within each one of us is in the divine rhythm and the pattern and the wholeness of the activity of God or Spirit, whatever we call this Holy One. It is here celebrating itself through each one of us, whether it is through the words being spoken in the service, whether it is the notes from the piano or the words in the songs. This is the activity of this one. We are with it in unity. We come and gather here this morning to celebrate and be lifted up as it surges forth through each one of us, whether we are receiving or whether we are giving. It is the same. It is that wholeness, that completion of the circulation and activity of God, of Spirit. It is our companion here today, this morning. It walks with each one of us. Its arms on our shoulders. It's walking with our shadows, whether it is in the touch of a finger or in the gesture of a hand. This is this Spirit celebrating itself, expressing itself through and as everything. So this service here is a sacred activity. It is a holy expression. It is the divine one showing up, gifting and giving, for it is love itself, and love seeks to express, to connect, to know the joy of being in one with each other. So every adult and every child is an integral part of this dance called Spirit, in the presence of the Holy One. And so my heart is filled with gratitude for this gathering, and in gratitude for the joy and the celebration that this Holy Spirit, this divine presence, this Holy Creator has given us and gifted us here this morning as this service. So I simply surrender my word into its law, for its law is what is already known. This truth is already present. This wholeness is already complete. So I surrender it and I let it be. I let the love flow. I let the love heal. I let the love sing and speak its way in and through every heart here today. So I simply surrender it. I let it be. And so it is. Amen. Good morning. My name is Sana Rose. I'm a professional prayer practitioner at the Center. Please join me in reading our affirmation this morning. My life is what I make of it, thought by thought, and herein is the possibility to express the divinity that is at the center of all life. And so it is.
Good morning, beautiful people of the Center for Spiritual Living. It is so nice to know that this is the last week that we have to talk about change. If you're visiting with us, we've just been a whole month focusing on change, and the topic for today is infinite variety, and that comes from one of the chapter titles in Ernest Holmes' book that he wrote with Willis Kinnear, entitled A New Design for Living. And the chapter has in it a sentence that just jumped out at me, and the sentence says, "In our daily living, we encounter infinite variety in all things." And I've just been sitting with that because it's really apparent at this time of year, out in nature, but everywhere else. There's so many possibilities. And the idea is that if there is infinite variety, surely there must be a greater possibility for me, for you. Yet, isn't it the case that sometimes we get a little over-attached to what is already present? And so we don't want it to change or go away. Or maybe it's because it's just so darn beautiful and we enjoy it so much. Or maybe it's because it's not so beautiful, but we're not confident that we'll get anything better. Whatever the reasons are, we sometimes try to hold on to what is already present. And all of the speakers that we've had and all of the books that we've read, they, like this month's book, the author Bodhi Paksa, writing Living as a River, him and everybody else is saying that clinging, holding on, as a strategy for coping with change is counterproductive. Yeah? Yeah. In fact, he writes in here, because it's like bad medicine, clinging. It's like bad medicine because it actually causes you further pain. Why? Well, Reverend Jeff, I've been catching up on the videos of the people speaking, and Reverend Jeff's video is on the front of our website right now. And I liked how he said it's probably because the nature of everything is to change. So even while you're holding something in your hand, insisting that it stays the same, it's changing. And it's so frustrating. The only thing that doesn't change, we might say, according to our way of thinking, is the thing itself. That's our synonym for God. The life, existence, the eternal, universal, unconditional, everywhere present, changeless reality from which all change comes. So then, the question for me is, why don't I just then go with the change? I mean, if all change comes from the thing itself, from God, why not just enjoy it and go? Well, the author of that book, Living as a River, he says, there are fetters that prevent us from going with change. Now, I had to look up what fetters are, just in case I didn't get it right. So, think manacles, chains, shackles on the ankles, of the feet of prisoners, preventing them from getting away too fast, because they have to shuffle with them on. So now I got the idea. There certainly are such things in life. Chains that bind us when it comes to embracing change. And the first one that he mentions is this: a view of a fixed self. In other words, when my idea of myself, when your idea of you is so fixed that it's like concrete or chains, and it prevents you from moving forward while everything else around you is flowing full speed. To me, it means that those times when I am of the opinion, and maybe you've been like this, that change isn't really possible for me internally because who I am is who I am. And it's fixed. It's permanent. Sure, everything can change around me, but not me, not my opinions, not my choices, not my tastes, no. So that idea prevents me going with the flow. I've met people who think that way about their personality. I've been that people. This is my personality. This is the way it's always been. This is the way it is now, and this way it's always gonna be, and so it's very inflexible, and the best I can do is just really deal with what I've got. So what would really be nice is if things around me change to accommodate my fixedness. I see I'm with friends. The reality is, if I hadn't changed in so many ways, including my personality, I think I would be inclined to still believe that people can't change. And I'd still be wearing the chains. But I wandered into a center for spiritual living like this, and I got the idea that it might be possible to live a spiritual life. And I started studying, and I learned how to be a prayer practitioner. And I learned how to sit in meditation. And I learned how to serve other people and put their needs first. And I learned to give and receive graciously. And I learned how to observe and look at my inner life. And along the way, things changed. And I started to notice them. I really got to think about that yesterday when we were at our board staff retreat. We were orienting the new trustees, and at that retreat we were looking at photographs from 2004, 2005 of the people, you and I, who've been around at various things, and we were just enjoying seeing the changes. We had pictures of our children who are tall. Mr. Church over there, we had a little picture of him as a little child, and we had Elizabeth's boy, Ian, but I also got to think about me and the first time I showed up at a center for spiritual living, and what I was like didn't only change in form, but internally as well. You know, I think what I can say is the major change for me now is that the thing itself, God, is first in my life. But it wasn't always so. A long time ago, in a land far away, I used to pride myself on being the kind of person who would say what he wanted to say. Take it or leave it. Bold. I used to pride myself on being able to defend myself verbally rather well, with a certain amount of skill. Brave. I used to pride myself on having quite a sharp wit, quite practiced, and great with sarcasm. It was my sword. Brash. But like I said, I became interested in a center living a spiritual life. I became interested in becoming a prayer practitioner. I studied and I became a minister, and I noticed that what I had pride in before was incompatible with how I wanted to live now. And besides, people were watching me. So I got an idea somewhere along the road of a way to live my life. So on one hand, I had this idea for my life, and on the other hand, I had my actual life. And so I began on the journey of trying to bring them into harmony, to be the same thing. And at first, I noticed it took conscious effort before I spoke. And at first, it almost felt unnatural to suppress my sarcasm, put down my weapon, throw away my sword and shield, huh? But it took a little time, and over time, I noticed this new idea became my new normal for my behavior. We call that a mental equivalent in this tradition, a new normal. And it starts with an idea. Everything starts with an idea. In this way of thinking, this teaching, we say it like this: consciousness is cause. And we've got a whole series of classes just starting up where you can learn about that. Kathleen Kearney's teaching Beyond Limits, a 10-week class about the basics. And I'm teaching a 5-week class that's less long, so it's easier for some people. It's called The Science of Mind and Spirit for Beginners. Barely any homework. And there are other classes too. And anyway, that's where I started. In class like that, I got an idea of how I might want to journey through this world. And then little bit by little bit, I had to adjust my speed, my language, my style, to match that idea. And now as I look back on that journey, I can see the change. And I do not enjoy so much that which I used to delight in. I'm changed. My taste, my personality, my self-expression, it's not what it used to be. So it gives me courage. There are other kinds of chains that prevent us from moving with change. And another one is when you or I are of the opinion that myself, who I am, is subject to external influences. In other words, factors which are beyond my control how I show up in the world. It's not my fault. And living with that thought in my mind is like walking through the world with handcuffs on as well as the shackles. I have no choice. And whereas there may be some truth in the thought that we are sometimes a product of our environment and there are sometimes heavy influences or control mechanisms around us, our study of a spiritual life is to be vigilant for such thoughts as other people make me behave the way I do. And to get a mental equivalent, a new normal that is like this. I too make me behave the way I do. Which statement may be truer than the first. And even if it appears at times that other people have a terrific influence over me, I start with the idea, the mental equivalent, and let it guide me through the elegant process of shifting internally. So I don't live subject to circumstances only. I was visiting with a friend of mine just recently, and during the visit, he had to take a business call. And the person on the other side of the phone was speaking so loudly that I could hear the whole conversation. And this person was being just obnoxious and talking in exaggerated, urgent ways. And my friend, usually soft-spoken and calm, I could hear his voice systematically getting louder and stronger as he started to match the tone of the caller. And then when he hung up the call, he looked at me sheepishly and said, "Oh, what are you supposed to do with that?" And we laughed about it, and he talked about the tremendous loss of personal power we experience when we let somebody else set the tone for our life expression. And he said it's like we follow them. And we walk through the world like puppets that are powerless when we do that. And I nodded wisely. And then the very next day, I had the opportunity to see if I could do any better. Because I had to call the credit card company for our church credit card because there was a discrepancy on the bill. And so I was having a tremendous difficult time understanding the agent because she was talking in a kind of like clipped, very fast Southern accent. And so I kept on saying, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't understand it. And then eventually she got really frustrated and she said, "You will have to write." And I could just feel it. Yeah? You know that? There it's coming up, I could feel the moment of anger and it's going past the point of no return. And then I remembered the day before the conversation with my friend, and so I asked myself in that moment as it was rising up, if there is such a thing as an infinite variety, endless possibilities available all the time, then what options do I have here in how to respond other than the ways my anger wants me to speak? 20 years ago, the story would have ended differently. Yeah? Yeah. And I would have felt perfectly justified because she made me rage at her. She started it. I'm spiritual, and she's an idiot. Not so much anymore, It's available as a choice, but not so much. You know, I would have felt you should put that person up, not so much. I don't know. So even the fact that I was able to step back and notice what was happening is a change for which I am so grateful, so happy to observe. And in the infinite variety of possibilities of showing up, guess what? I can still be awful if I want to. That's freedom. So beautiful. So now that I know it's possible to grow in a different direction, in another way, I have hope. I'm excited, even though at first it might take some conscious effort and it might feel like, hey, I'm not being my authentic self, you know? Well, here's what I tell myself in moments of change like that. I'm being my authentic new self, becoming. I'm matching my behavior to my mental equivalent. I'm starting to act as if the mental equivalent is actually true. Of course, in the beginning, it will not feel comfortable. I'm not used to the suit yet. And the current self, who wants comfort, wants to retaliate, and has all the rationale and keeps pulling back, is different from the mental equivalent, which is suspicious and is of the opinion that no good will come from swords and slings and arrows and I love to see people change. I love to see change in me. I love to see people becoming their greater yet to be. It's one of the things I hear frequently from people who come to the center and they get an idea of a larger life and they are so surprised how radical the change works itself in them. It starts with an idea of possibility, and then change takes care of itself, unless you go kicking and screaming with shackles on. I've been watching ABC's Once Upon a Time. Does anybody watch that? A couple of you watch that. Well, it's a story of all of the characters of our well-known fairy tales, and they have been transported by a curse into modern-day America, and they're living in a town in Maine called Storybrooke. Except all the characters have forgotten who they are. So Snow White doesn't know she's Snow White, etc. You know, forget her name. Mary Elizabeth, exactly. Everybody except the Wicked Witch and Rumpelstiltskin, who worked together to contrive the curse to transport them all here. Got it. And the Evil Queen and Rumpelstiltskin are the two most despicable creatures I have ever witnessed. And I enjoy watching the show for a couple of reasons. First of all, because it's very well written. I think it's the same writers as the Lost series, right? But the other reason is I like watching the reaction I have to the Evil Queen. You know, it's I just do not want to believe that people can be that awful. And so I am completely mesmerized every time she speaks, you know, because she reminds me of people who have a very fixed idea of self. This is how it is. This is how it's going to be. Take it or leave it. I'm right. Don't cross me. Deal with it. It's black and white. And I watch, you know, and it's completely reasonable to think that she and people like her will never change. Except that the writers keep on hinting that these two characters might change. And so I get pulled right in. You know, I'm watching, because in my experience of life, you can change. Yes, you can. And I want to yell at the screen. I want to say to her, you can do it. You can change. You don't have to be like that. Things are not fixed. Drop down your weapons. You just got to get a new idea, I want to tell her. But really, isn't that for me to do? And for you to do? I got to get a bigger idea. Make space for the people in the world to be the way they are. Know who I am and show up and act the way I say I want to be. Because I can get very fixed in my ideas about how she should be. I was watching Bill Maher's, one of his comedy shows, and I know he's a very controversial comic, but I think he's brilliant. And he commented on this saying, no, nothing in life is fixed. Nothing at all. There is no black and white when it comes to life. No, there are nuances in everything, even in what is right and what is wrong. I really had to sit and think about that. Where am I fixed? Where is the space for infinite variety and possibility? Where am I in a rut? So you can see this topic has been working on me. I've been asking myself the question, maybe you'll ask yourself the question. If the way I show up in the world is not subject to other people or external circumstances that I say are beyond my control, and they may be, if that's not so, would I be any different from the way I am now? Well, I had to really look at that. And when I do sincerely look, I can find behaviors in me and speech patterns and habits that I have allowed to creep back in. Got comfortable with them again, starting to get used to them, you know? Even though they do not fully support who I say I want to be in the world. Just like a fine dust settling on the furniture you don't notice anymore, but when the guests come, they see it. Another chain mentioned in the book is the chain of doubt. Doubt that change can even happen. And that causes discouragement. And maybe it comes from, fatigue from trying to change. I know for me that when I get discouraged like that, I can become hopeless. And if I'm hopeless, it impacts my behavior. And then I spend no new effort on trying anything new. I spend no energy on developing new habits or exploring new territory. I apply no prayer to reveal newness. I just go down, that way? And I know no better cure for doubt than to replace it with awe and wonder. And I know no better way to set awe and wonder afire in a heart than through art, music, dance, literature, and nature. Just recently, I had the privilege of being taken on a tour of the new Green Music Center at SSU. I was blown away. Just walking past the 200-year-old olive trees into this auditorium all of blonde hardwood everywhere in a U shape with the back wall that falls down so thousands of people can sit on the lawn with state-of-the-art. I was elevated just being there. And I thought of all of the great concert halls in the rest of the country I'd seen, and I thought, in Sonoma County, beautiful. And then just a few weeks ago when I was at in Washington, D.C. at the National Art Gallery and spent the better part of the day looking at paintings that I couldn't conceive of producing, yet it made me want to paint. And I'm not even a painter. Or being at the Library of Congress and walking around and seeing the quotes of great literary heroes and heroines, and it made me want to write. Or being at Spring Lake right now, in this time of the year, walking around and not even being able to take in the infinite variety of what there is to look at. And it filled my mind with fresh energy and ideas. Made me think of something I read, and I can't remember where, but Ernest Holmes wrote this. He said, life is action and movement and enthusiasm. And unless we keep doing new things, then we will not have the interest in newness. And I've been sitting with that. It's up to me to get a larger idea for life. Every day, something new. Think a thought larger than my life is right now. Why not? And it got me to thinking about how fortunate I am to be able to keep company with you, to hang out with people like you who are interested in developing and expressing their greater yet to be. It's like an oasis to me from the world. It's wonderful, and how important it is for me to keep on putting myself in situations and environments that balance the doubt and discouragement that may come from ordinary life. And how important it is for me to stay interested in life. That's my business. The final chain that he mentions in the book is this one. This is the fetter number 3. He calls it this: dependence on observances. And what I took it to mean after I read the whole paragraph, I understand it means that it's really very easy for you and I to become distracted while we are on a spiritual journey, just because of the infinite variety, just because of the complexity of living. And sometimes it can overwhelm us to the point where we may lose sight of the vision. And we become embroiled in the details and experience life as being in a rut. And the way this shows up sometimes, it shows up as having the effect of stealing time. It's the sort of thing when you realize it, you think, I've been spinning my wheels but going nowhere. It's the sort of thing where you wake up and you see, I have been giving my time and my attention and my energy to something that I don't even enjoy. It's not good for me even, maybe. It's the sort of thing that you find yourself, you're so stuck in the details that you forget to dream, and it has the effect of this. Where did that week go? Where did those last 10 years go? So I bring to you an antidote in the form of a beautiful piece of writing from one of our own heroes. And I offer it to you as a meditation, sort of like a prayer. So I invite you to breathe in. And if it's comfortable, close your eyes as you breathe out. And let these words find their home. It's by Howard Thurman, For the Inward Journey. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. Despite the dullness and barrenness of the days that pass, if I search with due diligence, I can always find a deposit left by some former radiance. But I had forgotten. At the time it was full-orbed, glorious, and resplendent. I was sure I would never forget. In the moment of its fullness, I was sure it would illumine my path for all the rest of my journey. I had forgotten how easy it is to forget. There was no intent to betray what seemed so sure at the time. My response was whole, clean, authentic, but little by little there crept into my life the dust and grit of the journey. Details, lower level demands, all kinds of cross currents. Nothing momentous, nothing overwhelming, nothing flagrant, just wear and tear. If there had been some direct challenge, a clear-cut issue, I would have fought it to the end and beyond. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of God, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. I invite you to breathe in and exhale into a moment of quiet contemplation. And once again, a deep breath in, followed by a sigh, if you like, as we use that breath to build the bridge between moments to the moment where we share. So I invite the ushers to stand, and I invite you to take your gift in your hand and repeat after me, I bless this gift.
I bless this gift.
I send it forth to heal and prosper.
I send it forth to heal and prosper.
It does great work in the world.
It does great work in the world.
Amen.